Hello, CCAE friends. We look forward to being with you later in the conference. And sorry we couldn't join you today, but we're really delighted to be here virtually talking about the survey and the importance of the survey. I'm Joanne Shoveler. I'm the Vice President of Advancement at the University of Waterloo, and with my colleague Sean Thomas, who is the AVP Advancement Services at the University of Waterloo. What I'd like to do first is ask Sean to talk about the importance of the survey from his perspective in the advancement services role that he holds at the University of Waterloo and any other prior experience that you have, Sean.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joanne. I've been working in advancement services for about 20 years, the first 16 at Wilfrid Laurier University and the most recent 5 at the University of Waterloo. And I think over that time period, the importance of coming up with reliable and consistent benchmarking data has been reinforced to me over and over again. And I think that this survey presents a tremendous opportunity for those of us who are in the number crunching business to really come up with a consistent way of comparing ourselves across institutions. In the past, we would have to make phone calls to all of our peers and beg them for the information. I mean, everybody was very happy to provide it, but it took a lot of legwork to put together the comparison information that we needed. And now we have it all together in one package, so I'm very excited to see this.
Sean, you were saying earlier when we were speaking that some of the, when you're talking about the number crunching, absolutely. And you were talking about the importance of presenting that to senior leadership in terms of building resources and so on. I wonder if you could just quickly talk to that.
Sure thing, Joanne. Yeah. I think when we're making the case to our institutions for resources or to justify the resources we currently consume, one of the things they're always looking for is how do we compare to our peers? How are we, kind of measuring up against some of our other institutions? And I think in the past, as I mentioned, we've had to go out and do a lot of legwork to find this information out. Some of it's publicly available and some isn't. But I think this gives us a really reliable and definitive authority on how we're doing compared to others.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thanks very much. So what I wanted to do was talk more from a strategic point of view, to be looking at how we do that number crunching, that data analysis, looking at where our strengths and our weaknesses, and be able to turn that into a strategic point of view. So first, I'd like to go back to my experience at INSEAD. I started my advancement career at Western University. I was there for about 17 years, and about 8 of those was in the advancement area. Then I moved to the University of Guelph as Vice President in Advancement and did a number of things at the University of Guelph. And then I moved to INSEAD Business School, which is based in France and has a mere campus in Singapore. And so I was responsible for all of the fundraising worldwide for INSEAD. When I went into INSEAD in 2012, we were at a pretty low performance level. We were at about 4 million euros a year annually, which just was not at the level that we should have been. And in order to understand why we were at that level, we did a really deep data analysis. We did a deep dive on the numbers, and particularly looked at the decades of graduation, the years of graduation, the decades of graduation of the INSEAD alumni, because frankly, we had great capacity there, and they were not giving according to the capacity, and the numbers had to tell us that. So we did that deep dive analysis, a lot of number crunching, and we determined that indeed people who had considerable capacity were giving 5,000, 10,000 euros on their reunion years. And what I realized was that when in talking with those alumni, they were not willing to give at their capacity because they were being asked as part of a collective in their reunion years. So they couldn't give $1 million when their peers were giving 5,000. So what we were doing was actually putting a cap on the giving. And the other thing, so once we determined that, then we started looking at what our resources were, and in fact, we had deployed all of our resources, or INSEAD had deployed its resources against that reunion giving. So our strategy actually was putting a cap on the giving. So what we did was we looked at a lot of benchmarking of peer institutions, other universities, other business schools, comparator schools that weren't business schools but had that kind of capacity, that kind of alumni structure, reunion structure. And then we looked at, okay, how do we have to position ourselves if we're going to be elevating that giving to the level of capacity that people had? And it was, in fact, we used our initial analysis, then we looked at our comparator benchmarks. It validated those assumptions. We looked at how those institutions were structured. We reflected that structure, and it took some real work in that change management. We created that strategy, and then essentially we went to the board. And at that point, we went to the board to say, we're going into campaign. These are the resources we need. This is the direction we need. We're ready for the campaign. And we had full board support and then the campaign leadership. And as I said, we were at 4 million euros a year when we started this journey. And when I left in 2016, we were at 25 million euros a year. So it really, that strategy had worked. We had the board support and we were making a considerable difference. So coming to Waterloo was a great opportunity to work with a much larger institution, a comprehensive institution. And we have, as you know, we've done a lot of number crunching to understand where our giving is. And the data analysis that we've been doing over the last while was indicating that we had the pyramid that looked like this. And we felt that we weren't very robust in that middle area, and that was an area of a capacity that we had to be able to grow. So when I was looking at our results from the survey, what I did was I walked through a few steps in looking at the survey to be able to give us the information we needed in order to inform our strategy going forward into a campaign. And one thing I should mention is that we have been in campaign planning for about 18 months now, alongside our strategic planning, and we've been looking at the kind of data analysis we need to do, restructuring we need to do. We're in the midst of a bit of a pivot in refocusing our resources and our strategy. And so this survey came at the perfect time for us. So thank you, Mark and team, because it came at the perfect time where we could be looking at that data in a big picture way and saying, okay, how is that helping us to inform that strategy, position it for the president, the leadership, and the board? So the first thing I found as I looked through the data was positioning. We at Waterloo, we're a very large institution, but we do not have a medical school, a business school, legal school. And so we are considered in that comprehensive category. But as I looked at the data in the survey, I realized that really we were bridging between the comprehensive and the medical doctoral categories. So at the comprehensive, we're a big institution, and we have been very successful in getting very large gifts. If I looked at the medical doctoral, we were more in the middle of the pack. And when I looked at what the campaign levels are, what the annual giving levels are, we were somewhere in between. So that really helped in terms of our thinking around strategy of where we should be positioning as a campaign. The second was I took our assumptions that we had made about being fairly good, solid at the annual fund level. We have been able to be performing at that high level, but that we needed to really strengthen in the middle. And as I looked through our numbers and how we were positioned against our peers in both the comprehensive and the medical doctoral, we were able to validate those assumptions. We were able to validate where we should be making those investments, where we should be really doubling down on particular activities. And we have been doing that. We have been investing in that middle layer, and particularly at our faculty level, our faculties have become quite good at that middle layer, and we're able now to say, okay, let's make sure in our strategy that we are supporting that middle layer growth, and then we can now reorganize and reposition some of our resources to be at that very high end, because that's where we need to be within the campaign. So as we looked through the numbers, we looked through our positioning, where we fit against certain categories, we were able to say, yes, those assumptions are correct. Our strategy to reposition yet again, to do that pivot, is a good one. And then finally, I found that as I worked through the survey, the data, the pieces that I can pick out of the survey to talk about that strategy, the assumptions we're making, and the positioning that we have, that will create the urgency and importance for the leadership of the university around the campaign. This is going to be good data for us to really reinforce that campaign strategy that we are implementing to support our strategic plan and create that confidence that the institution needs in order to make the right investments, in order for our volunteer leadership to step forward and know that we've been able to do our homework both behind the scenes but also with this kind of comprehensive data. So, Sean, any other comments you wanted to make just to reinforce one or 2 points? Or?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right at the strategic value of the survey, Joanne. And I would also add that one of the things that, to me, it has going for it is the consistency of the data. We all use the same reporting definitions. We all reported the same data in the same way. And therefore, we can have a high degree of confidence in what it is that we're saying. So we know that when we're presenting this to senior leaders at the institution or volunteer members of our campaign cabinet, that we have complete confidence that what we're saying is the truth and is accurate.
Terrific. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank
thank
you
you.
for the work that you and your team did on this. Thank you to all of you for the work that you've done in this, because as Sean says, this is an incredibly valuable tool for all of us to use. It helps us as professionals grow in our organization. And thank you again, Mark, Jillian, the whole CCAE leadership for the work, and CASE for the work that you have done in making sure that this CASE CCAE survey is available to us all in a broad way, and that we can use this inaugural year to just strengthen it over and over again. Thanks so much. Have a great rest of day, and we look forward to seeing you in the rest of the conference. Take
Thanks.
care.